We start with you. You've tell us a little bit about your background. Where were you born? How old are you? What have been some of the highlights in your life?
Well, I was born in Iowa, Clayton, Iowa, which is a little town on the Mississippi River. It was a delightful childhood. I was only number 201 in the town, so you knew everyone in town, and I loved it there. It was beautiful, too. It was just a little valley between two huge hills right on the Mississippi. I spent most of my life searching, constantly searching for things that I want in my life. A religion, happiness, and these kind of things. I will be 50. I will be 89 in April, and I have a very full life. I'm very happy with my life, and of course, having the right partner for the last 50 years has certainly helped that.
Right. And when you were searching, what was your family's religious orientation when you were a girl?
Actually, I was the searcher for religion from the time I was a little girl. This town that I lived in had only one church, and it was a German Baptist church. And by the time I was 10, I realized it was much too strict for me, so I started searching for other churches. And it wasn't until I found my spiritual path in the last 25 years that I've settled into any one religion.
And I know that's been a part of a deep tie for your marriage, is your spiritual path has coincided. So tell us a little bit about Jo-Ray.
Well, Jo-Ray is a spiritual practice. It started in Japan and came to America about 55 years ago. It's never seemed very popular. It comes from the same place that Reiki did, as far as that goes, and Reiki has been more powerful than Jo-Ray. Jo-Ray never charges, and Americans usually have a problem with anything that doesn't cost money, can't be very good. So we always are anxious for people, and our process of giving Jo-Ray for healing is always free, and we're always open for people. And we do a practice here in town on Wednesday nights where anybody's allowed to come in and get Jo-Ray, and we're always interested in spreading the word. And because my husband joined me in this, it was a big trip for me to find something that was fit for him too, as well.
Right. Just so people know, the Jo-Ray and Reiki and chakra balancing is every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. It's drop-in, and it's at 1010 Mangrove behind Access Dental. I do the chakra balancing, and Cherie and Bob do Jo-Ray along with other people, and Jasmine does Jo-Ray. So it's very full and wonderful. Bob, tell us a little bit about your origins.
Well, I was born in Minnesota, and my family moved to California when I was 12 to the Los Angeles area. And I had a kind of a responsible childhood. My parents were both alcoholic, and I was kind of the leader of the family during that period from the time I was probably 10 years old. And I had 5 siblings.
Younger than you?
Younger, yeah, I was
Whoa.
the oldest. So it was kind of a difficult time until about the time I got out of high school. I mean, the situation hadn't changed with my parents, but the other kids were more able to take care of themselves. So I kind of was able to have my own life. So a lot of the time in my youth, I wasn't really prepared for life because I had these other responsibilities. I was kind of withdrawn in school and that sort of thing. So finally, I was able to grow up after I was 30 years old, and she was a big part of that. Because when we met, I was still kind of an infant in many ways, and I didn't really mature probably till I was 40.
Do you think that's true for a fair amount of men?
Well, if they had the kind of childhood that I had, it might be.
Okay, what kind of work have you done? I know that you're a singer. I don't know what else you've done in terms of interests like work.
The biggest job I had in my life that I was at 23 years was in Willows. I worked at the fiberglass plant there for 23 years, just before I retired. I retired in 2002, so that's been a while ago.
What did you do at the plant?
I was the machine scheduler, and I bought the raw materials for the equipment.
Okay. Dr. Herman Gray is representing E&B, and tell us a little bit about how you came to be a physician.
Well, well, I was born in Germany, in Wuppertal, Elberfeld, and was raised in a Jewish merchant family, but my mother was a Christian, and then because German children were not German Jewish children were not accepted in middle school and high school in Germany at that time, I was sent to England for 2 years. So I learned English there. It was a very interesting place, run by German Quaker ladies for Jewish children. And then we emigrated to America in 1937. And we lived in Klamath Falls, Oregon for some years, where I finished high school.
That was you and your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have siblings?
I had one sister who died 14 years ago. And after high school, I had 1 year of college in Eastern Washington, at Washington State College, and the next year at University of California in Berkeley.
Yay, my alma mater.
Because doctors were needed in the U.S. Army at that time during the war. I only had 2 years of college before coming to medical school, which happened in New Orleans at Tulane University.
Did the military put you through med school?
The U.S. Army sent me to medical school. At the end of the war, but the war ended before I finished medical training, and so I owed the government 2 years of service, and I was then accepted in the U.S. Public Health Service and worked in the leprosy settlement in Carville, Louisiana, south of Baton Rouge, and later worked with the Center for Disease Control in Florida and then in California.
Wow, how is that to work with lepers? I mean, that must be,
Well,
they're so sad.
Leprosy is a bacterial disease related to the leprosy bacillus. It's related to the tubercle bacillus, but exists at a cooler temperature, 35 degrees centigrade. So it's in the skin and the arms and legs, and also in the nerves of the limbs. So people have paralyses of some of the muscles. And no, one doesn't have to be afraid of it, but it is true that in many societies there was great fear of leprosy.
Yes. And then how did you meet Bee, your wife?
How did I meet Bee? Actually, I met her because she was a public health nurse, worked for the city of Oakland. In her district there was a man who had leprosy, and so her supervisor, the supervising nurse, asked her to call the state health department, that there would be someone there to talk about the care of leprosy with her. And that was me.
You met because of leprosy.
Actually, well, we talked on the telephone a couple of times, and later she came to visit a small Presbyterian church in Berkeley where I was a member, and we were sending a teacher to Korea. And so she came for the send-off supper for this person, and we got to talking, and that's how we really met.
And was it love at first sight?
No, one wouldn't put it quite like that, but certainly I took her out, and we had ice cream together in downtown Oakland and this sort of thing. And we were married in 1952.
How old are you now,
I'm
Thaddeus?
now 95.
And what do you attribute your longevity to? Why are you bright and walking around
Well,
and full of life?
Probably both inheritance of long life. My paternal grandfather lived to be 95. My father died at 76, and also how we conduct our life in respect to especially food. So we are rather modest eaters and eat mostly vegetables and fruits, and a little bit of meat, but not much.
And do you
Mediterranean style of diet.
have a spiritual practice, a belief system?
Yes, I'm a Christian, and we are members of Bidwell Presbyterian Church here in Chico, and have been since our last return from Nigeria in 1987.
Another factor that comes up is that people who live a long life may not be worriers and negative. You know, they can take adversity with a smile. Do you identify with that?
Yes, I think so. Of course, her actual Dutch name is Bauke. Bee and I lived in Nigeria for many years and had to get used to a different culture, and also learn two different African languages, Tiv and Hausa. And when you go through all those experiences and work with other folk who are doing similar activities and work, you have a community of both Africans and foreign missionaries, and that way you broaden out your experiences, and you have to face those with helpfulness, kindness, and joy.
When you were in Nigeria and other African countries, did you observe polygamous marriages alternative to our nuclear families? I'm sure you did.
What kind of?
Polygamous where the...
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Polygamy was something that many of the more affluent farmers had more than one wife, and their thought was that if they have a lot of children, then they would help on the farm. However, that has many drawbacks, because the older wives will be very disturbed with the young wives, and in fact the young wives were often called the wife of the lap, who sat in Papa's lap. And so among Christians, polygamy was not allowed.
And did sometimes women say, oh, it's nice to have a support system of other sisters to share responsibilities and stuff. Generally, did you hear that the wives, the younger wives or the older ones, were resentful, or did they make it work? They had to make it work.
Well, I've talked with some of the men in the Tiv language about marriage, and certainly they considered the more recent monogamy a better system of marriage. Yes, definitely. One of the features of marriage in the old, before the British colonial administration, was so-called exchange marriage, and young women even hanged themselves because they had to marry an old geezer who was sent to them by the family.
Well, that still happens. Yeah. Let's talk about how you two how you met and fell in love and got married. What was was Bob singing?
Yeah, that's right. First saw him singing, and I said,
This is in a
I
bar?
like that. It was in a nightclub, yes. And he was just singing, and he came, when he stopped singing, he came and sat in the next chair to me, or seat to me, and we talked, and I think we started dating real soon after that. It was very, very much so. We're very different. We rarely think exactly about the same thing. A few things, but it's always to talk about it, to make it something that's right for both of us. I like to be around a lot of people. He prefers to be quiet. He loves football, and I don't much like football, things like that. But we've always been able to work through things. We both had a great deal of love for our families, even though they were kind of difficult, and we both took care. We took care of his parents and my parents both in their later years, and so that brings you even closer together when you share that kind of responsibility. And then we of course have had ups and downs and ins and outs, because that's what people have who live together so long. But it's been a wonderful time since he's retired, and we've both had time to work on our love of Joe Ray and traveling. And in fact, we're going to leave this month to go to Buenos Aires,
Ooh.
and we're looking forward
Antarctica.
to Antarctica, and see the penguins, which is my favorite thing to see.
Oh, how
So
fabulous.
it's an exciting thing, and we love to travel. We drove to Washington, D.C. this year, camping and staying in motels, and had a good time. Visited something like 17 different states while we were doing that.
So shared interests,
Yes.
being willing to talk through and compromise
Right.
differences. Bob, did you take that seat by Sherry on purpose? Or was it by chance?
I don't remember. It could have been on purpose, yeah.
And when did you decide, oh, I really would like to make a lifetime commitment to Sherry?
I think we dated about a year before we
It
married.
was a while.
Yeah, we were both determined not to ever get married again. I had been married before, and I was determined not to do it again. And I don't think he really looked on marriage favorably. That hadn't been a great thing in his family, and I think, but, and it was always a challenge to be who the first one would give in to it. The first one to say, I love you first, and, because that opens you up to something, and I remember that being a challenge. And then I thought, well, this is childish, I'll say it. So we were together, about a year before we married? Something like that.
Maybe a little longer.
Yeah, not too
When
long.
we first started going out, I considered it a fling.
Yes.
I had no thoughts of permanency.
And what changed your mind?
I guess just time together, and it just developed,
Mm-hmm. And what did you learn from your first marriage?
What did I learn from it? That you can love somebody but not be able to live with them. That
Why?
was a very strong thing for me.
Why couldn't you live with him?
Well, because of alcohol, in that case particularly, but I would have to say anybody I've ever loved, I still love. I just can't live with them sometimes. And so that was, I had 4 children in that marriage, and that kept me together longer than I probably would have if there hadn't been children.
When you got married, were the kids at home, Bob? I mean, were you a stepfather actively involved with raising kids?
There was one of the kids still at home, but she was like 17, so it was just brief. Yeah, we were empty nested pretty soon. Of course, they always come back.
No, always.
Dr. Gray, did you have children?
We have two adopted sons. The older one is 62, the younger one is 59.
It makes you feel
And
old,
they
huh?
live here in Chico, which is very nice. We get to see them.
Do they have children, so you have
No, they have no children.
A lot of times people say that having children is the hardest part of a marriage because the focus is not on romance, it's not on the couple, it's on the crying baby and the baby waking you up every 3 hours. Did you find that or not?
No, our difficulties were when our boys were in their teens, when they had some friends who, for instance, drank alcohol and they became drunk, and it was difficult to deal with them at that time. So of course, that's all in the past. Fortunately, young people do grow up and change for the better.
Right. Their hormones settle down. So when were the most difficult times in your marriage?
It was when we came back from Nigeria in 1972. We lived in Chester, up in the mountains, and I was busy with a medical practice, and this is when our sons were in high school, and that was the difficult time.
Right. Was Bea working at that time as well?
Bea was working as a school nurse in Westwood. She actually sometimes bicycled all the way from Chester to Westwood.
Wow. Good for her. So did you ever go to counselors to help with the boys, or they just grew out of it?
Not at that time. Later we did have one or two sessions with a counselor, but that was a bit later.
If you and Bea disagree over the years, what have you disagreed about?
Well, at that time it was a question of how to deal with our two sons. After that, there were very few differences or disputes between us.
What about roommate issues, like who's neat and who's not neat, and who leaves toothpaste in the basin, and those kind of mundane issues?
No, except that I'm not as organized as Bea is, and I have a room in the house that's my office, and things are, paper piles up there, and she's not very happy with that.
It's good it's your room then, huh?
Yeah.
You can shut the door. What do you do to keep your relationship interesting? I heard that you write to each other and do some special
Yes.
things.
We went to a marriage encounter weekend. I don't know whether you've heard of those.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we lived in Chester, and the marriage encounter was in Reno, which was sort of interesting. One of the suggestions was that people should dialogue, to write to each other. So in the time in Nigeria in the 1980s, we did this every day. We now do it once a week, and we go out to dinner once a week and write a question. So I write the question, and then both of us answer in two separate books, and then we exchange books and we see how we deal with this question. Question could be, for example, we've had visitors yesterday. What was the most important thing that you learned there, or what did you enjoy?
Mm-hmm. And so you're still learning things about each other.
Oh yes.
That's very inspiring. 66 years, that's really inspiring. And then you go out to a restaurant or go have a meal together
Yes.
once. That's your date night.
Yes.
Anything else that you do for couple building?
Well, we pray together. We have our meals together, of course, and when I was still working, I would telephone from work to see how things were at home.
That's sweet. I love that. What about you two? What have you done to keep romance alive and learn more about each other and that kind of thing?
Well, because we share, even though we're very different, we share a lot of the same things, like the travel and our religion, our spiritual practice and things like that. And we also pray together, and I think that's a very powerful thing to do for a marriage, is to share that. I went to many different churches when Bobby and I were there. I would go to one, and that didn't work, and I go to either they didn't like me or I didn't like them. So finally, and he didn't go with me, and then finally, when Joe Ray came along, he stepped in and was right there, and that was a very big deal for me, for him to join me in the spiritual practice, and it's done wonders in bringing him out too, also, because we meet with these other Joe Ray people in Los Angeles and everywhere. And we've traveled 3 times to Japan, was where our religion was started, and there's spiritual growth at those times. It's like you go along on an even keel, and all at once you'll have a spiritual growth, just maybe by seeing a flower. It's very simple, the growth is, but we've done this together, and I think that's probably what strengthened our marriage more than anything else.
What would you add to that, Bob? What makes you stay together?
Patience, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, she claims she has no patience, but that's not really true. She's very, very patient with me, to the breaking point, I guess. But
What do you do that creates the need for patience?
yesterday I left the closet door open.
Not that.
I get that a lot.
Never shuts the door.
She's the neat person. Keeps the house very spotless, blah, blah, blah. And I don't contribute to that very much.
What about cooking?
We kind of do that together. She's the real cook, but I stick my finger in there once in a while.
Chop things and do
Yeah.
prep work. What do you do to keep a romance alive, like sex after all those years? How does it stay vital?
That stays vital. If you stay young, that stays vital, I think. It's partly because of the beauty in it, the beauty that it brings to the relationship. It's very important. It changes the balance between the two of you, I believe, having a relationship like that. And many times it smooths things over that have been bad. And that's a good trip.
Do you experiment with new things so that you're not always, we know this works, so
Yeah.
we're gonna...
We always have. Yes, we always have.
Bob, do you want to add to that? How do you make sex stay vital over a period of time?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
So where do you get new ideas from, like books or videos or just creativity?
Computer, probably. Or,
The internet.
yeah.
Dr. Gray, what about sex over a long-term marriage? How do you keep it interesting?
Well, as we grow old, we are holding hands and give a kiss now and then, and that's sufficient. And in old age, I've learned a lot over the years from Bee, because she's an avid reader. We share books together, and really have a quiet and a gentle life together.
Mm-hmm. When have been the most exciting and passionate times in your marriage?
Well, that was probably in the young years when we were first married, and after we were off to West Africa a year and a half after we were married. And there, I think we were also brought close to each other because of the challenges in this different society of yam farmers.
Right. So you're the outsiders, and that kind of
Yeah.
makes you've got to stick together in a way. I'm going to take a little break here. Ask Dr. Gale is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by Ebony and Ivory, presenting Josh Hegg Trio on Friday, January 11th. The trio will be performing their Little America project, inspired by the nation's diversity and the role jazz plays in our culture. Accompanying Josh are Ethan Sweet on bass, Madison DeSantis on drums, and special guests, vocalist Michael Bone and trumpeter Eamon Cowell. Doors open at 6 p.m. It starts at 6:30. The tickets benefit the restoration of the club's Steinway piano and are available at thechicowomensclub.org. Ask Dr. Gale is also brought to you by Alternative Energy Systems, a locally owned and operated partnership providing sustainable energy for life. Alternative Energy Systems offers residential, commercial, and agricultural solar energy solutions. More information can be received by calling 345-6980 or visit savingenergyforlife.com. So you're listening to KZFR Chico, listener-supported community radio from the Sacramento Valley, the foothills, and beyond, FM 90.1. I do a video of the show, and I put it on my YouTube channel, so if you would like to see this show again, or see it, and not just hear it, go to YouTube and search Gayle Kimball. It's GaylekimBall. And also on that YouTube channel, I'm working on a new book, which is about visionary scientists. So these are scientists who are creating a new paradigm of non-material approach to science. They talk a lot about consciousness and quantum physics and non-locality. They're really fascinating. So if you want to hear them, they're available. They're MDs, PhDs, doing really fascinating work. So let's talk about karma. I know that Cherie and Bob believe in it. So do you think that you are in any ways karmically drawn to each other to learn certain lessons? And if so, what might that be?
I think we've lived many lives together before. I think we've lived as mother and child, and I think that that it was part of the karma for me to come into his life because he needed so much help with his family, even after we were married and so forth. And I came to love his family, so it worked out very well. It took some of the stress for him off for me to share in that relationship, and we took care of his parents when they were elder. And but I think, yes, that we have spent many lives together.
Do you agree with that, Bob?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any specific memories of those lives, or you just feel familiar?
No, not specific. After being together for a long time, it feels like kind of an extension of some other relationship, which I'm sure is a past life relationship. I just can't identify it.
Do you have any ideas what it is?
I think it was a mother and child relationship.
Who was the mother?
I was the mother. I know that I have been been a man many times in my life, and it carries over into this life too, because I really like men. I enjoy being with men. I like what they talk about and things like that. And I've always appreciated Bob's allowing that. Although I don't do well with the word allow. I like having relationship with men, and most of my relationship is with other Joe Ray men and people. But I feel very sure that I was his mother in one life.
And does that mean now that you get a chance to be equal?
Yeah, I think
So
so.
you
I think it
kinda-
took away some of that, you do this and you do that thing, and made me if I want to have something, I want a favor, I want something, I want to ask for it in a way other than a mother would ask for it with him, so that he didn't always feel that somebody was pushing on him. So, and that wasn't always true. That had to be learned in our relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dr. Gray, what do you feel that you've learned from Bea and she's learned from you?
What did I
What
do
have you learned from each other,
from each other in
Yeah.
Chico?
or anywhere?
Well, first of all, to continue steadily in our life together. That's very important. And then also here in Chico, I think we have had opportunities to meet many interesting people. I even once had a session with Glenn Kendall when I was a deacon at church.
He was the president of
He
Chico
was the
State.
president of university, and he told me all sorts of little interesting stories as when he first came to Chico. And then I was there at his memorial service at church, and his daughter-in-law said to me he was a genial man. Which he certainly was. He was born in Tennessee, so he was one of these congenial Southern gentlemen.
Uh-huh. And was that part of your relationship with Bea, that she was friends with him too?
No, she did not actually get to meet him at that time. He was already retired, and he was living in assisted living at that time.
Uh-huh. And
But Bea has many friendships with women, some in the church. She's also developed a friendship with a Hispanic lady who was born in Mexico, who's a licensed vocational nurse at the rehab hospital, where she's going to go tonight. So she's going to get to see her friend Hortensia, who cares for patients there.
so what we're hearing is that what makes the marriage work is you give each other freedom. You're not jealous and possessive. That you have common interests, especially spiritual helps, and that you know how to work through issues without making it one person right or wrong. What would you add to that in terms of what makes it work?
Well, I think freedom to be who you are is so important in a marriage. My first husband was very jealous. I say to everyone that 14th year of our marriage, I proved everything he thought I did right, and then I divorced him. So I couldn't deal with jealousy, and I have never found Bob to be jealous when I sit and talk with men, because I like to talk to men. It never seems to bother him that I do that, and I feel the same way with him. He really enjoys being with women more than with men, and that certainly has never bothered me, because I understand that experience of rather being with somebody softer instead of, although he loves the football players, that's and they're not so soft.
No. What do you do when the football games are on the TV?
Sometimes I watch, I come and go with it, but I love to sew, I love to read. I get on my iPad and play games, and it never matters. I always have something to do. I can't imagine life without to do, so.
Do you think that's part of the reason why you're a peppy person in their 80s?
I think so, yes. Yes, I think it has a great deal to do with it, because I think that if you choose just to sit down and die, that's about what you're going to do. And if you find things that please you and stay doing them, and searching is really important. Searching for the things you don't know, because you never get it all, and books give you a big choice in that. My eyes are not real good anymore, and I mostly read on my iPad because it's lit behind and it helps me read. But I can't imagine not reading either, so it's been important for me to still be able to read.
And then do you sometimes read the same things and discuss it?
No, he's not a reader.
I don't read. I haven't read a book since high school. Not a whole book.
I know that you're interested in politics, so you get it from the media.
From TV, yeah.
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 This is kind of a footnote, but how long do you think Trump's going to stay in office? What's your thinking
Can
about
I
that?
answer it? Too long.
I think he's going to serve out his term and then be unelected. At least that's my hope. I think that would tell the world that the American people have spoken. Impeachment would just create more issues.
Because then we'd get the vice president who is a true.
No, I mean with the voting population. We're split now,
Oh,
and impeachment would split us further.
right,
But if we just vote him out, that's kind of final.
right, yeah. Dr. Gray, what are your thoughts about the man who everybody's thinking about? Donald Trump.
Well, unfortunately, he's impulsive and changes his mind now and then, but I do not see him being effective in the presidential office. I read The Economist, among other things that I read, and there are people in the administration who are trying to calm him down, but not with much success.
Well, he got rid of them, at what people call the adults in the room.
Well, we'll wait and see. Of course, one thinks about the whole idea of the electoral college,
Oh, yeah.
and that seems it had a useful purpose, all right. But now, in our modern age, one would think that we would change that, and that we would elect people on the basis of popular vote.
Right,
It's difficult to be a politician, to be sure.
yes. Let me ask you this. How have you seen gender roles change since you were married? I mean, you were married in the
In the 50s.
50s, so that was very traditional time. And, the ideal was the housewife with the apron and the high heels and the father knows best, leave it to Beaver. Have you seen gender roles change in your own relationships?
No, actually, Bea and I have always shared everything, work and relaxation and so on. So we have not had this kind of patriarchal household, but it's true that there were mostly patriarchal styles of marriage in those days, and now women have much more, have advanced in status in our country. And that has brought good things, but also other challenges which we will have to face,
Like what?
like the women are no longer willing to participate in an authoritarian household.
And is that a good thing? Or
Yes, it's a good thing, but I think that what is needed in marriage is patience. And we see so many divorces happening to young people because they haven't really settled down together. They haven't worked it out. And that's what takes time.
How long would you say it took you to settle down with B and work things out? How many years?
Well, maybe 4 or 5.
It's called the 7-year itch. I think the average duration of a marriage is 7 years. So, somewhere around there. What about you two? How have you seen gender roles change? When were you married? What?
71.
71. So that was the kind of the height of the women's movement and feminism.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the gender role in our household has not changed since we met. Because she was never that father knows best wife. And I was never playing the head of household role. So we're about the same now as we were then as far as gender equality.
So who makes the financial decisions, like investing or paying bills or how we spend our money?
He pays the bills, but we always talk about things.
Yeah, we talk about expenses and profits and so on.
And how we want to spend our money, and is there enough? And can we actually go to on this
Go to
trip and
Antarctica.
things like that, yes.
Do you think of yourself as a feminist?
You know, that's very strange you ask that, because I've always had feminist friends. And they would tell me these things that I couldn't even imagine. Like, well, it's so bad to have to stay in on Saturday night when everybody else is partying. And I say, why would you ever have to stay in? You know, I just never understood that role, because you do what you want to do. Or if you want to go out on, you don't have to have a man to go out, you know. And I never quite, and invariably I would meet someone that we would become good friends, and we were totally opposites in our thinking. I mean, I always want to support other women. I just don't understand how we got in a place where we allowed other people to tell us what to do, especially men in our lives, you know.
So you don't think of yourself as a feminist because you didn't have to struggle?
I don't think that way. I just don't think like they think. Or I didn't seem to, at least when I was younger, because it seemed to me like they were feeling left out, and I wasn't feeling left out. So I had a little trouble understanding where they were coming from.
Well, obviously women have been left out of the
Yes.
government and
Yes, everything.
heads
I
of
see that.
corporations, and
But as a young girl, I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all.
because you could do what you wanted.
I was going to do what I wanted to do, and so why aren't you? You know, attitude. And now I know that really didn't work for everybody. You know,
Because your parents let you do.
my mother kind of decided when I was pretty young that I was going to do what I wanted to do, and she would just love and take care of me. So I had a wonderful mother, the best mother ever.
Oh, that was smart of her.
Yes.
Did you go to university?
And I went to 2 years in Arizona Western University, but I was already married and had children when I did that. I got married very young.
So, Dr. Gray, what advice would you give to, let's say a young couple said to you, you've been married successfully, tell us how we won't have to get divorced. What would you tell this young couple?
Well, I would say, first of all, learn to do things together. Every evening we play boggle together.
Play what?
Just
Sorry?
Boggle.
What's
Have you-
boggle?
Well, it's a word game, just for
Oh,
fun.
yes.
And we have fun together. And that overcomes many difficulties in life. Then also the importance of being modest in life, that is to say, not overextend your finances. That is one of the worst things that happens to people in marriages. They get into debt and then they're in big trouble
Then they're stressed.
and they're stressed.
Masters and Johnson said pair bonding is based on the shared memory of good times. So if you're in debt and struggling, you're not bonding. Yeah.
Very hard to bond under those conditions.
So what's your advice, Cherie and Bob, to this young couple sitting here? They said, we don't want to get divorced. We want to stay together like you.
Talk to each other. You know, just don't. For me, I try to get unangry before I talk because because we're so different that Bob is quiet and I'm not. Anytime we have a disagreement, I feel like I run right over him, you know, and so I've tried not to do that in my life. And I certainly think I've done it better in my elder years. But I think people have to share and share the bad as well as the good. And one of you is going to be stronger than the other. That doesn't mean they get to be boss just because they're stronger. Share your time, share your love, and find a spiritual practice that you both can enjoy. That holds so much together.
It's nice to have a higher source of wisdom to be guided by. Your advice, Bob?
I would say be patient and try not to raise your voice. That gets bad things started. And by being patient over the years, I think you'll find that you develop a different and stronger closeness that you didn't have when you first met.
Dr. Gray's
Even in
agreeing.
love at first sight circumstances, after 20, 30, 40 years, you can be closer in a different way. One that when you're first married, you don't even understand.
That intimacy. Do you finish each other's sentences, kind of a thing?
No, but we know what each other are thinking
No.
occasionally. You know, I'll say something to him and he said, "I've just been thinking about that. Are you in my head again?"
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Do you think having a first marriage that didn't work made you a better partner? Because a lot of people now find that their second or third marriage really works because they learned from the first one.
Well, I learned a lot from it, but I was so busy too raising my children.
4 children.
Yeah, right, that it's possible I could have made the marriage better, but I kind of doubt it because of his attitude about anything and everything I did. but I think that the marriage grows so much if you just have, like Bob said, patience with it, and you want it. I mean, I think so many times people get married, and after they get married, they think, this is not the kind of life I like. I want to go out and hang out with the boys again and things like this. And they haven't really done enough of that before they marry. And then they can't settle down to a normal relationship of children and the other things that... And I think that's harder for boys than for women. Women like the nurturing of the babies and things like that, sometimes more so than husbands.
Yeah, it's so hard for husbands when the baby and the mother are so bonded because
Yes.
of nursing.
It shuts them out, too.
Yeah, it
Yes.
shuts them out. So couples that I interviewed for my book, 50-50 Marriage, said the man would get the baby and take it to the mother if she was nursing and change the diaper. So he was involved in the
That's
process.
good.
Yeah.
Mine didn't do that.
My son's dad didn't either.
Right.
And I was teaching, so I was tired. So let me ask you this. After living so long, are you, Dr. Gray, hopeful? Because humans are creating nonstop war and destroying the environment, and electing people that are autocrats around the world, most recently Bolsonaro in Brazil. Living as long as you have, what's your perspective on it? Are we going to make it?
I think we have to be hopeful, and the love of God will overcome all these difficulties that we see ahead. Certainly we have to live more responsibly in respect to environment, in respect to our fellow human beings. It is certainly true that actually at this time there's less war than there has been before, according to the expert historians. Although we read about it all the time because we have all this instant news nowadays. But nevertheless, there are improvements.
Okay, are you too hopeful? What do you think?
Yeah, you know, in Joe Ray, we're taught that darkness can reach 99% and God can still pull it back. That, you know, that things can get ever so bad, like we're seeing that now. And I always look at this teaching that talks about that, and I always feel faith that I'm not worried about it truly, because I think God will step in and take care of things.
What are we waiting for? I mean, it's pretty bad.
Well, I think that he's showing us. I think that if we don't change our ways, this is how life can always be.
The consequences.
And I'm hopeful that people will start seeing that pretty quick, and then we'll be, with his help, be brought to a better place.
What about free will?
We all have to have free will. You know, without it, we're not really human, I don't think. So I think it's important to use your will in a good way, and maybe some of these people have to learn how to do that. They're creating all the problems that we have today.
Are you hopeful or not hopeful about
Well, I'm hopeful that this is a cycle and that it's going to cycle back, at least in my lifetime.
to what? Cycle back to what?
Back to civility.
Oh, back to Obama.
Yeah. Yay.
Oh, my goodness. So thank you very much. This was